Hello, friend. So you've decided to give the hit isometric zombie apocalypse simulator Project Zomboid a go after seeing it in a sale, some videos, or maybe a friend recommendation. You install the game and maybe you give the tutorial a go and have considered playing a solo game to get used to the game's mechanics. Like many others including myself, you might have picked the apocalypse game mode and probably got mauled by the ever-relentless undead horde, or ate some bad food before the first week was even over. Or maybe you're actually a god gamer and made it past the first month or so. Whichever the case is, this is your resident onion here to start up a new vanilla game that you can either play along with or simply chill out and watch the apocalypse unfold from an outside perspective. Throughout this video, I'll insert text tidbits about the moodles as they pop up, but I will cover them at the end for anyone that leaves this video running in the background so you're not missing out on the info. Now once you pick a game mode, you'll be met with a screen that lets you pick a starting town. Ignore the Louisville spawn since I actually have no idea how to get rid of it. By default, you have 4 towns that you can spawn into: Muldraugh, Riverside, Rosewood, and West Point. Riverside is probably the easiest town to start in due to the lower overall zombie population, a factory providing tools, plenty of parking lots, and the river providing both fish and an unlimited water source to farm with. Rosewood is probably the second easiest town to start in, with a mild zombie population. The police and fire station being so close together lets you secure weapons and tools easily in the early game, and the town itself has a few large parking lots that vehicles can spawn in. Muldraugh is a bit of an odd cookie with the residential areas being fairly tame in zombie population, but the highway is probably one of the most crowded stretches of road in the game. If you get past that though, this place has a lot of industrial zones which provide plenty of tools for carpentry and metalworking. West Point is probably the hardest starting town to spawn in with both a high and dense zombie population. If you're an absolute giga chad and make it past that, downtown West Point has a lot of good loot. Most notably the gun store and the factory that might just spawn a sledgehammer on the east end of town. For this game, I'll start in Muldraugh as it's both the first one on the list, and plenty of good times were had here in my first few hours of Project Zomboid. After picking your starting location, you're brought to the Occupation and Traits screen. With up to 76 traits and 22 occupations to choose from, this can be a little daunting for a new player. Let's break the screen down a little, starting with the occupations. As you click through them, the number on the bottom right changes. This number indicates how many points you have to spend on positive traits, or how many points from negative traits you'll need to balance this number out to 0 or higher to actually be able to start the game. As you mouse over the occupations, the game will state if that occupation has special traits or abilities like burglars being able to hotwire cars, as well as any starting levels in certain skills. These starting levels not only give you a little head start, but also give you a permanent experience boost to those skills with the exception of strength and fitness. Now once you pick out an occupation, you'll either have points to spend on positive traits or need to balance out your occupation's cost with negative traits like I had to with this construction worker. If you wanted to start the game up with a baseline character before diving into the traits, that's perfectly fine. If you're in my situation, we'll go from the bottom to top here, starting with my usual negative trait picks. Thin-skinned is easily offset by making safe choices and protective clothing. Underweight can be taken care of by taking a fitness trait and has fewer negatives compared to overweight. It's also far easier to gain weight instead of losing weight. High thirst can be pretty easy to deal with as you'll simply just need to carry an extra bottle of water or 2. Smoker is easy to handle as zombies can drop 20 cigarettes at a time as well as lighters and matches. This also gives you another avenue to deal with stress since it prevents any adverse effects from smoking cigarettes. Prone to illness can be almost completely negated by outdoorsmen. Pacifist makes it slower to level weapon skills up, but if you plan on not dying, this is easy free points. Conspicuous is another easy pick, as sneaking only really works if you're not in front of a zombie to begin with. Weak stomach is only really a problem if you drink contaminated water or shove uncooked or finely aged food in your mouth. For my final negative trait, I picked short-sighted as it's almost inconsequential. It only really affects foraging radius and is easily negated by wearing glasses. While there are some other negatives I can pick as well, I've got any veteran occupation players in mind here, as well as anyone that wants to play with their friends. This gives plenty of points to play with as a baseline for the negatives, and can be adjusted or experimented with accordingly. For my positive trait picks, I generally gravitate towards getting skill points that are normally difficult to level, or weapon skills for that permanent XP boost, and traits that can't otherwise be acquired through the various magazines or skill books thrown across Knox County. For this character, I'll be running Handy for the boost in maintenance for lower degradation rates on my weapons, as well as Carpentry. Stout and Fit for some extra strength and to offset the lost point in fitness from taking underweight. Fast Learner for an experience boost to all skills. Gymnast for the nimble boost. Cat's Eyes in case I'm caught in the dark. Dexterous for the boost in item transfer speed. Outdoorsman to lower the effect of adverse weather conditions. And for my final pick, I pick Wakeful, as this is a solo file and less sleep needed lets me capitalize on time. Again, I will emphasize that these aren't be-all end-all picks and there's plenty you can play around with. If you really like what you've picked out for traits, there's an option to save your traits as presets at the bottom of the screen. On the next screen is character creation, where you're given the option to change names, hairstyles, and clothing. Different occupations can start with special clothing, such as Fire Officer having access to the firefighter trousers. Of course, you can simply choose to hit random and see what kind of name and random set of clothing the game deems you worthy of. Orville Milam seems like a good name to me. Once you've created your sim, you can save their looks at the bottom of this window and start up the game. Day 1. Spawning in, I am greeted by a peculiar voice coming from the TV. Not only did it provide entertainment, but also culinary knowledge. This is the Life and Living channel, and it airs a show at 6 AM, 12 PM, and 6 PM. 6 AM is the Cook Show, 12 PM is Woodcraft, and 6 PM is Exposure Survival that goes over various survival-related skills like trapping, foraging, farming, and fishing. While these show runs, I look around my starting house for a weapon, some kind of water container, and anything else that would be useful, such as a saw, skill books, and recipe magazines.
Nope.
Equipped with the ever-trusty frying pan at my side, I set out into the neighborhood to get my nosy neighbors out of the way and search for some specific items to get my personal checklist started. I'll need to find a water bottle or some other water-bearing container for high thirst, a claw-type hammer, screwdriver, and saw, as this holy trinity of tools lets you disassemble most furniture indoors, nails in order to build furniture as well as barricade windows and doors, a backpack for more carrying capacity, an axe so I can get more logs and saw them into planks, and high-calorie food to gain weight so I can lose underweight. I managed to find nails and a screwdriver from my neighbor's tool shed, as well as a metal bar to use as a weapon. Inside his humble abode, I find a claw hammer and a bottle of bleach that I empty out and opt to use as my water bottle for now until I get my hands on a proper bottle. They also had some Could It Be butter stashed away in the fridge, and I caught the Woodcraft show while I was there.
Ibertonic. Erectus. Yuri. Unum. Darwini.
This is a reminder that I needed to grab a watch so I can keep track of the time, which is important in the first few weeks if you want to capitalize on the free experience from Life and Living. Thankfully, there were plenty of generous donors that would lend a watch to me, so I set out to check out the rest of the neighborhood. Along the way, I keep Orville well fed with the more calorie-rich foods in order to lose the underweight trait. I also occasionally drop off items back at my starter house so as not to tire myself out from carrying too much. Before I catch the 6 PM showing of Life and Living, I manage to find a stylish fanny pack, a revolver, and I fill up all the pots and kettles that I picked up around the neighborhood in anticipation of the water and power going out down the line. After learning about how to fish, I started to make my way to the northern end of the street. There I managed to find a medical building, a small grocery shop, as well as several vehicles to which I never found the keys to match them. Some browsing later, I decide to head back after scarfing down some ice cream and find 2 beat up cars and a nice looking Jeep. I leave it for another day as the time in game is pretty late. Back home, I fill up the rest of the cooking pots and kettles I found, and fail miserably to get planks from disassembling my dining room chairs. In light of this, I take a page out of episode 2 of my combat tutorials and block off the stairs with impassable furniture in an attempt to deter the average Florida man that could possibly break in while I sleep. Before turning in for the night, I open up the map and mark down all the houses and buildings I've gone through thus far. Once I'm done with that, I conclude day 1 of the apocalypse. As promised, let's go over the Moodles we've met so far if you've left this video going on in the background and haven't had a chance to look at the pop-ups as they come along. The first Moodle we've met is the Panic Moodle. This one pops up if you see zombies, trigger claustrophobia, agoraphobia, fear of blood by treating a wound, or experience a nightmare while sleeping. While this is active, your weapons will have a lowered critical hit chance, and later levels of Panic will decrease your damage. Panic will also make your character stand up from the ground faster and prevent you from sleeping. Using beta blockers or alcohol will alleviate this. If you're playing solo, sleeping pills will also work to get your survivor to sleep if needed. Just don't mix it with alcohol. Shortly after that, we came across the Thirst Moodle. Represented by a cup of water, your character is looking for some kind of beverage to quench their thirst. There are plenty of sources to choose from, ranging from your usual refreshments, certain foods, and vegetables. The first onset of this Moodle has no effect, but subsequent ones will lower your carrying capacity and eventually start to kill your survivor. The next one down the line is the Hunger Moodle, shown as a knife and fork. Much like the Thirst Moodle, the first stage won't affect you, but later stages will affect carrying capacity and eventually start to kill you. This Moodle is also the only positive one that you can gain in Vanilla Zomboid if you eat a sizable meal. Doing so improves healing speed and gives you some extra carrying capacity. As the number of things in Orville's hands grew, we eventually got hit with the Heavy Load Moodle when we went over our safe carrying limit. While this is active, your character's combat and walking speed will slow down along with your stamina regeneration. Carrying heavier loads will damage your character until your health reaches 75%. This also increases fall damage, so be careful if you decide to make a dynamic exit off the second floor. Finally, we've met with the Stress Moodle. This can be caused by a number of things, including but not limited to zombies breaking doors and barricades, not smoking if you're running the smoker trait, having bloody clothing if you have the fear of blood trait, or you've been infected with the zombie virus. Entertainment media, cigarettes, and getting away from the undead masses will help you alleviate this moodle. And that's a wrap for this video. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, and consider subscribing. I would love to hear your Day 1 stories in Knox County. Or don't do any of that. Either way, much love and have a wonderful day.